What if the new girl at school holds a secret that could turn the tables on her bullies? What if the bullies mocked the new girl and even tried to slap her across the face? That would be a serious mistake, one they'd quickly realize when she fought back in fury and left them all stunned. Maya Reed tightened the straps of her backpack as she moved swiftly across the courtyard of Jefferson High School. At 16, she was no stranger to changing schools, an inevitable consequence of her mother's career in the tech industry. Each move meant starting over, memorizing new faces, learning new rules, and navigating the hidden social hierarchies that only insiders understood. But none of it ever scared her. After all, Maya had a secret that no one at Jefferson would ever guess. She was the niece of Vin Diesel. And Vin had made sure she knew how to take care of herself. She had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai since she was 8 years old. "This world's tough," Vin used to say during their backyard training sessions in Los Angeles. "You got to be tougher, but never cruel." Her new school, with its gleaming red brick facade and towering oak trees, looked welcoming enough. But Maya knew better than to trust appearances. Could this secret strength be her ultimate weapon against the school's toughest bullies? It didn't take long to figure out who ran the social order at Jefferson High. They called themselves the Crew, a pack of seniors who believed their final year gave them free rein to intimidate whoever they pleased. At the center of it all was Blake Morrison, a tall, broad-shouldered senior with icy blue eyes, a smug grin, and a pickup truck that roared louder than the school marching band. His entourage included Chase Walker, a solid linebacker who treated lockers like punching bags, and Logan Price, a wiry boy with a mean streak and a habit of filming people's humiliation on his phone. For the first 2 weeks, Maya kept her head down. She ate lunch under the bleachers, took long detours across campus to avoid crossing paths with the Crew, and answered just enough questions in class to avoid drawing attention. She knew how to survive, blend in, stay invisible. Everything started to unravel with a collision outside the chemistry lab. Maya, her arms full of books, rounded a corner and slammed into Chase's shoulder. He looked down at her as if she were an insect, daring to cross his path. "Watch it, newbie," he grumbled, knocking her books to the floor. Maya crouched down silently, gathering her things without meeting his gaze. She knew his type, the boys who believed strength came from making others feel small. If she ignored him, maybe he would lose interest. But Chase wasn't done. "What's the rush? Scared you're going to miss knitting club or something?" He laughed loudly enough to draw giggles from the nearby students. Maya stood up, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and walked away without a word. By lunchtime, the story had spread faster than a brush fire on a dry Texas day. "The new girl thinks she's too good for us," Logan sneered. Blake smirked across the cafeteria, nudging his friends. "We'll have to fix that," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The next few days were a gauntlet. Maya found cruel notes stuffed into her locker. Someone poured a soda into her backpack during gym class. Snickers followed her down the hallways. And through it all, she kept her chin high, just like Vin had taught her. "You don't give bullies the satisfaction," he used to say. "You stand your ground even when it shakes under your feet." But the Crew wasn't used to being ignored. They escalated. One afternoon, as Maya exited her Spanish class, she spotted Blake, Chase, and Logan lounging against the lockers just outside. The hallway was nearly deserted. She considered turning back, but that would only hand them power, so she kept walking, gripping her backpack a little tighter. Blake peeled off from the wall and strode toward her, his boots striking the floor with heavy, deliberate thuds. "Hey, sweetheart," he drawled, blocking her path. "You're new here. You don't know how things work yet. When a guy like me talks to you, you stop and listen." Maya gave a polite, tight-lipped smile and sidestepped him, intent on moving past. That's when Blake made a mistake he would regret for the rest of his life. With a cocky grin, he raised his hand as if to slap her cheek, not hard, just enough to humiliate her in front of the few lingering students who had started to watch. What happens when a trained fighter unleashes her skills on unsuspecting bullies? Time seemed to slow. In that instant, everything Vin had ever drilled into her bones kicked in. Maya ducked under his arm with the fluidity of a trained fighter. She grabbed Blake's wrist mid-swing, twisted it sharply toward his chest with controlled force, and kicked the side of his knee with precision. The bigger boy yelped in pain and collapsed to the floor, clutching his arm in shock. Chase and Logan froze, stunned by how fast it had all happened. Maya didn't even flinch. She stood tall, breathing steady, her hazel eyes fierce. "If you ever raise your hand at me again," she said, her voice low but carrying, "you'll be sipping lunch through a straw." She didn't wait for a response. She slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked down the hallway, her footsteps calm and steady. Behind her, a heavy silence hung over the few students who had witnessed it, and word spread like wildfire, not just that the new girl had fought back, but that she had done it with the cool precision of someone who wasn't showing off, but protecting herself. What Mia didn't realize was that someone had recorded the entire thing on their phone. By the next morning, everyone at Jefferson High knew. And by that afternoon, Maya's world was about to change once again. By second period the next morning, Maya could feel the shift in the air at Jefferson High. Whispers trailed behind her like smoke as she walked the halls, her boots clicking softly against the linoleum. Students who had ignored her the week before now stole glances, some with curiosity, others with open admiration. It wasn't just the students, either. Even a few teachers seemed to pause a beat longer when they called her name during roll call. Maya kept her expression neutral, kept her head high, and tried to focus on her classes, but she knew something had fundamentally changed. The crew wasn't ruling the halls this morning. Their absence was almost louder than their presence had ever been. By lunchtime, the full story had made its way around the school, growing in size and spectacle with each retelling. Some claimed Maya had flipped Blake over her shoulder like a scene out of an action movie. Others swore she had knocked out Chase with a single punch. The truth was simpler, but no less impactful. Maya had defended herself with precision without unnecessary violence and had left her bullies stunned in a crumpled heap of their own arrogance. As she made her way into the cafeteria, tray in hand, she noticed the usual power center, the big table where Blake and his crew usually sat, was conspicuously empty. Students parted slightly as she walked by, not out of fear, but out of something Maya recognized and respected more: acknowledgement. Maya found a quiet spot near the windows and sat down, poking at her salad without much appetite. She hadn't asked for any of this. All she had wanted was to finish high school quietly, honorably, maybe make a few good memories. But life, as Grandpa Vin always said, had a funny way of forcing your hand. You didn't always get to choose the fight, but you could always choose how you stood in it. She was halfway through her lunch when a shadow fell across her table. She looked up, ready to fend off another confrontation. But to her surprise, it wasn't Blake or Chase or Logan. It was a girl she recognized from her English class, a petite redhead with a kind smile named Jenna McCoy. "Mind if I sit here?" Jenna asked, a little tentative, but not fearful. Maya shrugged lightly, gesturing at the empty seat across from her. Jenna sat down, setting her tray on the table with a quiet clatter. For a few minutes, they ate in companionable silence, but Maya could feel Jenna working up the courage to say something. Finally, Jenna leaned forward slightly and said in a low voice, "That was amazing what you did yesterday. Seriously, you don't know how long people have been waiting for someone to stand up to them." Maya gave a small wry smile. "I didn't plan it," she said honestly. "I just did what I had to do." Jenna nodded vigorously. "Still, it meant something. You should know that." Over the next few days, more students approached Maya quietly, some to thank her, some to ask if she would teach them a few moves, and some just to offer a simple nod of respect as they passed her in the halls. It was strange, this sudden shift from invisible to visible. But Maya handled it the way she handled everything, with steady grace and a weariness learned from experience. What she hadn't expected, however, was Blake's return. It happened that Friday afternoon. Maya was stacking her books into her locker when she heard the low rumble of his boots approaching. She stiffened instinctively, but forced herself to stay relaxed, remembering her training. Turning, she faced him squarely. Blake looked different, less cocky, less sure of himself. His jaw was still set in that stubborn way of his, but there was hesitation in his eyes. Behind him, Chase and Logan lingered awkwardly, but none of them looked ready to pick a fight. Blake cleared his throat, glancing around to make sure they weren't drawing too much attention. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. Maya arched an eyebrow, waiting. I just wanted to say I was out of line," he mumbled. What we did, it wasn't right." Maya studied him for a long moment, reading the tension in his shoulders, the guilt in his eyes. She crossed her arms loosely over her chest and replied, "No, it wasn't." Blake shifted uncomfortably under her steady gaze. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "But I wanted you to know I'm sorry." Maya let the words hang in the air for a moment before giving a small nod. "Apologies are a start," she said quietly. "The real work is proving it." Blake's mouth twitched, maybe a grimace, maybe the beginning of a reluctant smile. "Yeah," he said. "I get that." As they parted ways, Maya felt something unexpected, not forgiveness exactly, but a softening, a loosening of the knot that had tightened in her chest since the first day she walked into Jefferson High. Change didn't happen overnight. She knew that. But sometimes it started with a single crack in the wall. The following week brought more surprises. Miss Sandival, the school counselor, pulled Maya aside after homeroom one morning. "Word gets around," she said with a knowing smile. "We're starting a self-defense club here. I hear you might be the perfect person to help lead it." Maya blinked, startled. She hadn't thought that far ahead. Her instinct was to say no, to keep her head down, to avoid standing out any more than she already did. But something in Ms. Sandival's warm, encouraging expression made her pause. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to step into whatever role life was carving out for her. "I'll think about it," Maya said carefully. Ms. Sandival smiled even wider. "That's all I ask." When Maya got home that night, she found Grandpa Vin sitting on the back porch, tinkering with an old motorcycle. The Texas sunset spilled golden crimson across the horizon, bathing the backyard in a soft glow. Maya plopped down on the steps beside him, resting her chin on her knees. "Grandpa," she said, "you ever feel like the whole world's looking at you and you're not sure if it's a good thing?" Vin wiped his hands on a rag and looked over at her, his dark eyes kind. "All the time, kid," he said with a chuckle. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Maya shrugged, staring out at the fence line where the shadows were stretching long and lean. "I don't know. Part of me wants to disappear again. Part of me thinks maybe I can do something good with it." Vin leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. "You already are," he said simply. "You stood up for yourself. You showed him you weren't easy prey. But you also showed him strength doesn't have to be loud or cruel. It just has to be real." Maya let the words settle over her like a warm blanket. Maybe she didn't have to run. Maybe for once she could stay and build something lasting. As the first stars pricked through the velvet sky, Maya made a silent promise to herself. She would not hide her strength. She would not let fear or uncertainty dictate her path. She was Maya Reed, granddaughter of Vin Diesel, and it was about time the world knew it. The following Monday, the announcement went out over the intercom. Jefferson High would be launching its first ever girls' self-defense club with an open call for instructors and volunteers. Maya sat frozen in her seat as the words echoed through the classroom. Students turned to glance at her, a few smiling, a few nudging each other. She felt her cheeks warm but lifted her chin proudly. Miss Sandyval caught her in the hallway afterward and grinned. "Still thinking about it?" she teased gently. Maya couldn't help but smile back. "Maybe not thinking anymore," she admitted. That afternoon, Maya stayed late after school, standing in the old gym as sunlight slanted through the high windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. The mats had been pulled out of storage, and a handful of girls gathered nervously along the walls, uncertain but curious. Jenna was there, along with a few other faces Maya recognized but hadn't spoken to before. Some wore gym shorts and t-shirts, others still in their regular school clothes, but all wore the same look, a mixture of hope and apprehension. Maya stepped onto the mat, the worn vinyl soft under her sneakers. She cleared her throat, voice carrying across the open space, "Hey, I'm Maya. I'm not here to turn you into fighters. I'm here to show you that you don't have to be afraid. You're stronger than you think. You just need the right tools." The girls leaned in slightly, listening. Maya demonstrated simple techniques first: how to break a grip, how to use leverage instead of strength, how to stay balanced and aware. She spoke plainly, explaining that real power wasn't about throwing punches, but about protecting your body, your dignity, your space. The room gradually filled with the soft slap of feet against mats, the occasional squeal of laughter when someone got a move right, the buzz of energy building like a slow, steady wildfire. For the first time since arriving at Jefferson High, Maya felt not just respected, but connected. As the weeks passed, the self-defense club grew. Word spread quickly that this wasn't some cheesy after-school special. It was real, practical, and empowering. Even some teachers stopped by to watch, nodding appreciatively. Maya found herself developing real friendships, too. Jenna became her closest ally, and a sophomore named Lily, shy and quick-witted, hung on every word during practice. The small victories piled up quietly. The girl who finally broke free from a wrist grab after 3 tries. The freshman who learned to shout no with her whole chest. The senior who confided that for the first time she didn't feel helpless walking to her car after dark. These weren't headlines or viral videos. They were private revolutions. And Maya cherished every one of them. Meanwhile, Blake Morrison changed, too. Slowly, awkwardly, but genuinely. He kept his distance at first, nodding respectfully when he passed Maya in the halls. But one afternoon, he showed up outside the gym, shifting from foot to foot, hands stuffed into the pockets of his faded jeans. Maya raised an eyebrow when she spotted him through the open door. "You lost," she called out. Blake shook his head, cheeks coloring slightly. "Miss Sandoval said you might need a volunteer for demonstrations." Maya hesitated. Part of her bristled at the idea, the memory of his raised hand and the arrogance in his smirk still fresh. But she also saw the vulnerability in his posture, the way he didn't meet her eyes. Growth, her grandfather had once told her, didn't happen cleanly. It was messy and uneven and sometimes came from the last place you expected. She tossed him a padded helmet and a pair of mitts. "Put these on," she said. That afternoon, Blake took falls, practiced holds, and stood as a willing dummy while Maya taught the other girls how to escape from bigger, stronger opponents. He didn't complain, even when he landed hard, and the girls grew bolder, more confident, laughing and clapping as they mastered each move. By the end of the session, Blake was sitting against the wall, sweating and red-faced, but smiling. As the girls packed up, Jenna came over and whispered to Maya, "You're like a real-life superhero." "You know that?" Maya chuckled, shaking her head. "Superheroes wear capes," she said. "I just wear sneakers." Things weren't perfect. There were still stares, still whispers from a few corners of the school. But the balance had shifted. Respect had taken root where fear used to grow. Maya walked the halls now with an easy confidence, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes steady. She knew not everyone liked her, and that was fine. She didn't need everyone to like her. She needed only to be true to herself. One Thursday afternoon, as Maya was locking up after practice, Logan approached her. She tensed instinctively, but his hands were shoved deep in his hoodie pockets, his expression serious. "Hey," he said gruffly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, too, for what we did. I was an idiot." "No excuses." Maya studied him for a long moment, weighing the sincerity in his voice. Finally, she nodded. "Thanks," she said simply. Logan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks, and nodded back before shuffling off down the hall. Maya watched him go, feeling a bittersweet satisfaction. Change was possible, hard, slow, and often ugly, but possible. As spring warmed the air and the live oaks around campus burst into green, Maya found herself invited to barbecues, study groups, birthday parties. She laughed more easily now, her smiles unguarded, her posture relaxed. She still trained every evening in the backyard with her grandfather. But now it wasn't out of fear. It was out of pride. Vin watched her with that small knowing smile, tossing her a water bottle after a tough round. "Told you," he said one evening as they sat side by side on the porch steps. "World's tough, but you're tougher." Graduation loomed on the horizon, and with it new choices. Maya had been offered a scholarship to a local college, partly for academics, partly thanks to an essay she had written about personal strength and community resilience, a piece inspired by her experiences at Jefferson High. She accepted it, proud and humbled. On the day of the graduation ceremony, Maya stood among her classmates in the bright June sun, the Texas heat shimmering in the air. When her name was called, she walked across the stage with her head held high, the cheers of her friends ringing in her ears. As she stepped off the stage, she spotted Grandpa Vin standing at the edge of the crowd, his sunglasses pushed up into his hair, his arms wide open. She ran to him without hesitation, laughing as he lifted her off the ground in a big bear hug. "I'm proud of you, kid," he murmured into her hair. Maya pulled back, smiling up at him, feeling the weight of everything that had brought her to this moment. "I'm proud of me, too," she said. Later, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned the color of fire, Maya sat with her friends around a picnic table at the local park, their laughter carrying across the warm summer air. She thought back to the first day she had walked into Jefferson High, the weight of fear pressing down on her. She thought of Blake, of Jenna, of the girls who now stood taller, spoke louder, lived braver. She thought of her grandfather's steady faith, of the strength he had built into her bones. And she thought, maybe life wasn't about avoiding the fight. Maybe it was about choosing the ones worth fighting and fighting them well. Maya Reed, granddaughter of Vin Diesel, smiled as the stars blinked awake overhead. She wasn't the new girl anymore. She was exactly where she belonged. If this empowering story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more incredible tales on BUP Stories.